Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today it's my pleasure to come back to you with an update video in regards to a video which I made last week about the slide in the dress code in the US Senate. Now this was a breaking story within the sartorial world which got a lot of press headlines wherever I looked at a newspaper or in the sartorial sort of internet presence throughout the world. And essentially, I'll just remind you that about 2 weeks ago in the US Senate, which is of course the upper house of the US government legislatory body, they did away with their dress code. They threw their dress code out, and to the outside person looking in, it looked as if this was an irreversible slide in the standards of, well, not only dress, but the way that our leaders, our politicians, decide to present themselves to the world. Now this was deeply concerning at the time because, you know, it appeared that this whole decision was based around one man's choice to be much more casual. And the man in question was Senator John Fetterman, one of the two representatives from Philadelphia. He was a senator, or is a senator, and it was pretty much around his way that he projects himself to the world. Now he decided to be the sort of ordinary everyday man. He sort of cultivated an image of being the ordinary Joe, and as a consequence he was in the habit of wearing very, very casual clothing to the Senate. Basically, you know, shorts, sweatshirt, hoodies, things like that. And he's a very big man, 6'9", of extremely large stature. So, you know, this huge physical presence, dressed in the way which he did, it certainly was affecting the reputation of the Senate, of which there was no doubt there. And in order to accommodate John Fetterman's sort of chorus that he said, you know, we should be able to dress any way that we wish, comfort is king. The Senate Majority Leader, a chap called Chuck Schumer, passed instructions to the Sergeant at Arms within the Senate that they wouldn't enforce their dress code. Now the Senate didn't really have a written formal dress code. It had an unwritten informal code which basically said that senators would dress in a business sort of standard, which is, to you and I, a suit, a shirt and a necktie. But that was no longer going to be enforced, and in essence this decision meant that members of the upper house of the American federal government could in essence wear pajamas to work should they wish to do so. So, you know, it was, well, my video which I made on that subject was met with almost universal condemnation from all of the comments. If you go back and have a look at that video, it was about a week ago, all of the comments there were, to a degree, I say all, about 95% of the comments exhibited a lot of negativity around this decision. How, you know, the standards in appearance of a whole country's legislative body can be influenced by one person who chooses to take a uber casual approach to their dress sense. Many of my viewers actually went to the extent of writing to my email address, and they apologized to me personally about the degradation in standards that were, you know, which were evident as a consequence of this slide in public standards. And they wanted to explain to me that this isn't the case in America, this was causing uproar in America, and, you know, there were actual apologies and representations that this wasn't, you know, don't get the wrong idea. Many people made the sort of suggestion that this decision was making the US an international laughingstock, and that they were in the lead in the race to the bottom when it comes to standards in public life. And I took all that on board. What I also took on board, and it's worth exploring equally, are the 5% of people who responded to my comments by saying, you know, it isn't everything. The way that one dresses is not the most important thing about the way one conducts themselves when they hold an important position of office. And, and they make a very good point. I would much rather have, for me, a member of parliament in my government representing me, democratically elected by me, who was good at their job, rather than somebody who was rubbish at their job, but were exceptionally well dressed. So I take that point as well. It is a very relevant thing to say that, our clothing is merely the veneer of the person that you're looking at. It does not mean they're a good person. It does not mean that they're good at their job. It just means they know how to put on clothes. I take that on board as well. But, I think it is fair to say that when we look at people who hold positions of high office, democratically elected by the public who put them there, they are our servants at the end of the day. We look at them and we hold them up as leaders, as mentors, as role models. And it would be fair to say, in my mind, that I would expect the leaders of my country to dress in a way that would make me feel proud rather than embarrassed. And I think this is what had tipped over in the States, this groundswell of people who were aghast by this decision, which made a mockery of the standards of public life in America, to a degree. Admittedly, as I say, only the veneer of clothing, that's what you can see, isn't it? You cannot see the man underneath until you see what's on the outside first. So it's an important thing. And I am pleased to say that such was this public uproar about this decision made by Chuck Schumer in the Senate chamber, that it has been overturned. And just the other day, just yesterday or so, I got to hear that a new dress code has now been put in place in the Senate, and it was actually as a result of senators themselves who came together and decided that a dress code was necessary. It was something which needed to be in place, and it was actually put into place just this last week. And I'm delighted to say that it was from within that decision actually came. Senators looked at the way that their chamber was going to be viewed by the outside world, by citizens of their own country, and rather than be an embarrassment, they decided to hold their position as leaders, as role models, and put in place a new dress code. Now, I have some of that dress code here in front of me, and it's interesting. The dress code is not overly prescriptive, but it is functional. And the new dress code for senators states that senators should wear business attire. And it's further been defined. So they don't just leave it at business attire, they've defined it to say that dress code should include, for men, a coat, so a jacket, a tie, and long trousers. They have not indicated what sort of shoes you have to wear. They don't say dress shoes or whatever. They don't indicate whether or not you are allowed to wear a hat. But these things are not mentioned, but the code is now in place. And if that code is to be changed in the future, it can't be done on the whim of one man, as was the case when this dress code was, the previous unwritten dress code was dropped by Chuck Schumer. Now it says that if any changes to the code are intended in the future, it requires a vote from the chamber itself. The outcome, in essence, for me, is that, the legions of people who have stood up, who have raised their hand and said, that's not how I want you to represent me as a person who governs my country, who is controlled is the legislator of my country. It's been a victory for them. They have slowed the degradation in the race to the bottom of public standards in America. And a very interesting thing has now taken place. Now, if you look at my previous video, in order to take the sort of sartorial temperature of the US Senate, I compared it to the dress codes of the UK parliamentary system and also the French National Assembly, essentially the French governing body. And when I held the American system up against those, they were very similar. The UK Parliament, it has a very loose dress code which just says, business in essence. It says male members of parliament should wear a jacket, no tie is required, but again, quite a loose dress code, open to interpretation. In France, again, no tie required, a very loose dress code again. So the consequence of this situation in the Senate has had a really bizarre outcome, because now I think they have possibly the most defined, the most written down and easy to understand dress code of all of the three, first world Western governments that I've just discussed. They now have a dress code which stipulates what you have to wear. And I think, they've gone from the outlier now to people who were wearing pajamas to work. Now they should be the smartest chamber of any governing body of that we have discussed here on this channel. And a very interesting thing, another sort of, as I finish really, a side point, as we're in October, all right, October is a sartorial month because on the 18th of October, and I know you're already aware of this, the 18th of October is International Necktie Day, where men around the world, intentionally well-dressed men, will celebrate the necktie, the humble necktie, by, revering it for that day, because it's slipping into extinction in some parts of the world. But the necktie for me still very much has a place, and actually its place hasn't been in government for a long time. The UK Parliament stopped the mandatory wearing of ties by male members of Parliament. I think it was in 2017 when John Bercow, the Speaker of the House, that's the sort of person who controls the standards in the House of Commons and sort of controls proceedings throughout the chamber. They said, or John Bercow said, ties not required. In the French system of government, in their assembly, ties are not required. Up until this dress code came into place, ties weren't required in the Senate. Now they are. So now we actually have the largest, most powerful country in the world now has a necktie as a mandatory requirement for members of the Senate. So I thought that was very interesting. And for me, this is very welcome news, because it is an indication that at least in American government circles, the slide to the bottom, the race to the bottom of standards in life has been abated on this occasion. And now our senators will no longer look as if they're heading out to the basketball court for a quick game of bounce. Now they look, as they should do, as if they mean business, and they represent their country's international appearance accordingly. So there we go. Nice update. For once, it's good news. The slide has been stopped, and I'm very pleased to bring that to you. So if you've enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like this, click the old subscribe button, send me a question, drop it into an email. If you want to support the channel, you can leave a comment, or you can buy me a coffee, or you can even become a patron, because I make additional video content for my patrons, and you will find all that information in the show notes below. So until the next time, dress like a senator, dress smartly. Don't forget International Necktie Day on the 18th of October. I will be releasing a special video for that. But until then, take care, and I will see you again very soon.